Hello and welcome to this episode, 4 Steps to Distinguishing Between Fear and Intuition. I'm so glad you're here. This is a common topic, and I hope that what I'm going to share with you today gives you tools and some pathway and how to work with when fear arises versus your intuition and how to tell between the two of them. So before I dive into the information, I just want to say that if you are watching this on YouTube, you can hit the subscribe button, and that will let you know when I post episodes and content here on YouTube. And if you're listening through podcast, you can give it some stars. Any ratings would be so helpful, and that will let others know that this information is out there and available for them. So thank you for spreading the word, and I hope you're enjoying the information that I'm posting. So let's dive in. So first of all, I want to say that the approach there's lots of approaches to this concept of distinguishing between your fear and your intuition. My approach is coming from the perspective that fear is a human emotion that we are going to have. It's normal. It's biological, it's instinctual, it's important that we have fear. It's not wrong. So, part of understanding this distinction between our intuition and our fear is first identifying your own relationship with fear itself. So, how do you relate to fear? How was it taught to you? Was it ingrained in you? What is your relationship to fear? And we could even say that for any of the emotions. What was your relationship with anger? Were you able to have anger? Were you taught anger, or was it just projected? How were you able to have grief? Were you allowed to grieve? Was it acceptable to cry? What were your early childhood responses to these very authentic emotions? And fear is one of them. And fear is interesting because historically, fear on an instinctual level is to warn us when danger is present. Now, danger is it's a broad term here. It could mean lots of different things. It can be an extreme word in some cases. Essentially, fear becomes the emotion. It is the emotion that helps us stay safe ultimately. And so when we're raised in environments where fear is a very predominant emotion, so that we can stay safe according to a system, a society, or multiple systems that we're raised in, fear serves a purpose. Its job is to help us stay bonded, attached, and have a sense of belonging to those in our closest system, maybe the family system, or maybe it's, extended family system that is supposed to keep us safe. And that's in that fear, love, and bonding all exist in the same sort of soup in our early childhood development. And if you've been following my work for a really long time, you know that I utilize the chakras as a template here. So we're talking about this early root chakra, bonding and attachment to the world, and that fear becomes part of our root chakra marinade, is what I like to say. What that means is that we might be operating from fears intrinsically inside ourselves that may surface at any given time. And sometimes those fears surface when we are going to, take a leap of faith, or if we're going to try a new endeavor, or if we're just going to grow as human beings and step into the unknown. Those deep early fears might surface, and they can feel like sabotages, or they could feel sometimes like obstacles or ways to hold us back. Essentially, the fear can get louder if we're going to go for something that we want to. And at the same time, we have this intuitive soul operating system inside us that says, I am, I want to, take this leap of faith, or I want to step into this arena. I want to grow. And yes, it's an area of the unknown. My soul longs for this, desires this, new phase of life, or whatever it might be, this major decision. But there's fear around it. And the fear is saying, don't do that. Or the fear is just there and it's present, even if the soul is saying, yes, I want to do that. And so sometimes we can have this polarity between our intuition wanting something and the fear getting bigger and saying, no, you can't have that. And then sometimes we are fearing something, and that fear in itself is wisdom. It's intuition. There's something that's not okay about the direction we're headed, and we're getting a lot of signs and signals and body fears about it. And it can be really confusing sometimes. Is it my fear that is driving this? Or is it my intuition? Or is it my fear that's stopping me? Or is that wisdom? It's a whole confusing soup here. So what's important to first recognize when trying to distinguish between our fear and our intuition is, what's our early relationship to fear to begin with? Are we comfortable with fear? Are we able to feel ourselves, your true self, in relation to fear? Or does fear just take over? And is fear a normal operating system? So some of the only ways we can find that out is through our deep exploration. So I'm going to take you into a way into that exploration just to help distinguish again between your fear and your intuition. And here are the steps. So the first step is to recognize when you're having that moment, is this my fear saying something bad is going to happen? Or is it my intuition saying something bad is going to happen? What is it? So first of all, close your eyes and take some deep breaths. And as you're breathing, we're going to bring our awareness down lower in the body into your legs and feet, and feel your sit bones making contact with your seat. And take a few deep breaths just to settle your body. And as you're sitting with the question, is this my fear or is this my intuition? We're first going to start with the question around fear specifically, which is this mine? Is this my fear? Or is this really old fear? And I think about my relationship with fear going all the way back. Am I carrying fears that surface in all these different ways that make it hard for me to feel myself? Make it hard for me to feel grounded and settled when fear arises. So just take some deep breaths, and whether you got a yes or a no on whether that fear is yours, we're going to feed your body breath and feed your tailbone area breath. That's where a lot of deep subconscious fears actually reside in the body. So take some deep breaths. And as you exhale, we'll start to let go of any early onset fears that you might have adopted and taken on as yours that might inform nervous system responses or anxiety or lack of trust, anything like that. So take some deep breaths and just let your body start to unwind around the question, is it mine? And let go of anything that isn't. And this is step one. Now, step two is about acknowledging fear in your body and befriending the fear or asking the fear. Fear, how do you show me when you're here? What do you look like? What do you feel like in my body? When I have fears, fear, anxiety, does your jaw tighten? Is there a pit in your stomach? Or is the mind racing? Or is there something else? Ask your fear to show you or give you the signal in your body of what happens in your body when fear is present. What does fear look like in your body? Let the fear show you. Okay, and then the next step, 3, is to ask your soul. So this is your intuition. Your soul is your intuition. And we have to build a relationship with our soul like we would have a relationship with fear, meaning we need to befriend fear or know what fear feels like and understand it, know how our body responds to it, but we also need the same with our soul. So, soul, how do you give me signals? So that's your intuition. Intuition, what do you look like in my body? Are you a feeling? Are you a knowing? Are you a voice? Are you a pictures and images? Is there a sense? Soul, how do you give me the signals when there's something I need to know? So ask your soul and let it tell you, let it show you how it's communicating with you. Once you have that body awareness of how your soul is giving you information, we're going to tune into a question. And the question might be a question that says, it might say, it's a question that where you might say, is this my fear or is this my intuition talking? Maybe there's something you're pondering. But the question here in the body is this my fear or is this my intuition? So let me tune in to my body and listen to the signal. This is what my fear feels like. This is what my intuition feels like. And then lean into your intuition internally. So what that might feel like is that you're listening more to it. You are being present with it, you are receiving more from your soul. And your soul at that point might give you a yes or no question. So when you lean into your soul, see if you get the yes or the no without the fear. And then as you do so, I'm going to add another piece here, which is that fear can accelerate the body and the mind into a lot of different steps. And it also can accelerate the need to know why. Why am I getting a no? Why am I getting a yes? Why am I getting these answers? Intuition gives us one step at a time sometimes. So, what's important to know is that sometimes when we're trying to differentiate between fear and intuition might say no, and the fear might still accelerate saying, but I need to know why. And, but what if, and, all these different qualifiers or reasons why. But with intuition, a no is a no. And we may not know the why for days or weeks or months. A yes is a yes, and we may not know why for weeks or months. So it's important to trust that your body is giving you signals in that intuitive sense. And it may not be a voice, it may be that the fear voice accelerates higher up in the body and the intuition is more grounded in the body, or we feel it in a different place in the body. So to distinguish between intuition and fear, we have to be able to sit with both. Sit with the fear, let it show you what it looks like and feels like, and then sit with the intuition, or what I like to say is ask the soul, ask your soul, or ask your body, and sit with that. And that ability to sit in both seats inside yourself gives that connection that both of these are very valid and important feelings and emotions in the body. But when you choose to sit in the seat of intuition and soul, you can start to get more clarity around what your question is. And the fear can take a break, the fear that wants to know why, and the fear that wants to know a lot more information about it. The soul sits in the commanding seat and says, well, no, and it's just no for right now. Over time, we can get the why, or the process can unfold after that. We'll get more information after that. But when we start to sit in that seat of clarity around no or yes, or whatever the result is, it starts to open up a deeper place of wisdom in which your soul can provide that information. But if we're accelerating in a place of fear where there's a lot that is activating in the body or in the mind, it can be very difficult to differentiate between the fear and the intuition. Now, sometimes questions come up for people like, I think someone is, I get this a lot, so I'm just going to dive right into it. People will say, I get the feeling that someone in my family or, loved one is going to pass away. And then it happens. And they start to have fears about this information, the sense that, how did I know that information? It's, and why do I need to know that information? Why does it come to me? What's important in that type of situation is that it's really just to acknowledge, first of all, that we are human beings. We are born into this life, and we will leave this life. We will die. We will move on from this life, and our soul lives a journey. And sometimes people who have gifts or abilities to be able to be in tuned with the spiritual side of their their being and of life. Essentially, they have their upper body intuitives, is what I like to say. They have higher clairvoyance or clairaudient sense, and they can connect spiritually. They might get information that is about the future or about somebody's life or something that's going to happen. And what's really important is when someone's opening up to that, number one, it's really important that we ground ourselves after any type of what might feel like premonitory information. Because if we don't stay grounded inside ourselves into the feeling and the awareness inside our body that we are safe and we are okay, then the mind will start to accelerate with more premonitory fears or anxiety that's happening, about the future. The other part is that we might, in this case, someone who's curious about this or has a lot more questions, you might need training around it. There might be I say this often in many, many places in my training program. Our intuition is out of control until it's in control. And it's in control through the process of clearing work, of grounding, of becoming more embodied, and of going through a training process. So if that is something that you want to go further with, my school, the School of Intuitive Studies, we do offer intuitive training and healer training for people who want to understand more about the gift that's opening up for them. But when we have this feeling of fear versus intuition, the only way we can often distinguish between the two is slowing down the process and grounding, like I did in step one here. Is this my fear or is this someone else's fear? I'm going to breathe and let it release. Then I'm going to ask my fear, hi, how are you, fear? What do you look like in my body? How do you tell me when you're present? What are the body signals I get? And then moving on to step two, moving on to step three is then asking your soul, hi, what are the signals you give me when you're communicating to me through my intuition? What do I need to know? How do you let me know? I'm going to sit with those feelings, sit with that awareness. And then finally, then you can tune into your question, your yes or no question, or is this fear intuition question? And listen to your body's responses. What's the information I'm getting from a grounded place that's connected to my soul? So these are steps you can follow to help differentiate between fear and intuition in a few steps. I hope that this supports you and that you can practice it and help refine more clearly your ability to stay centered and grounded in yourself without making fear wrong, centered and grounded in yourself with knowing more about your soul and your soul's information, how it's giving you information. I hope this supports you. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next episode.